This video is about the video that was made by Charlie Kirk, where he claims that he crushed an America's racist claim. He actually lost that exchange, and he lost it when the young student had said that it's how the culture has been perpetuated, how the culture of racism has been perpetuated. For example, if somebody said to you that child molestation is wrong and it's sick and it's evil, and you said to them, why? What makes you say that? And they said, well, it is. Okay, and you're like, well, you start saying stupid facts that don't prove your point. Who would win that exchange? The person who says it's wrong. Because just the fact that he said it's wrong and it's disgusting, even though it's kind of vague, he's made it clear that he's using the existing evidence that it is disgusting. And the burden of proof is on the person who would argue that child molestation magically isn't wrong. And so it is with the evolution of racism. As I pointed out in the video before this, there are millions of white Americans themselves since 1980 who have testified to the existence of racism to their friends, their family, what have you. Maybe they said that they saw somebody being treated in a racist manner, what have you. They testified to the existence of widespread racism. They said there's a lot of racism out there. A recent poll found that 64% of Americans believe that there's widespread racism against black people. And it's safe to say of that 64%, maybe 30% at least, have seen a lot of evidence that tells them there's widespread racism against black people. So in the 50 states, there's people all over these 50 states who have seen it themselves, they've heard about it themselves, what have you. And when you couple all their testimonies together and you say maybe 10% are mistaken, you get millions of cases of racism. It's happening all the time, all over America, which means that there's widespread racism, especially against black people. It's that simple. And thus, that means America has a huge problem with racism. And when we're talking about semantics and how people communicate, it's safe to say that when we hear the idea that America is racist, it means that there's a huge problem with racism there, including in the government and the institutions. So, for example, if someone said, well, there's places in the South that are racist, does that mean that every person in that place is racist? No. It means that there's a huge problem with racism there. Thus, he lost the debate. And Charlie Kirk and his side, and the Republicans, they're notorious for using woke as a straw man, for using radical leftists as a straw man, for using political puppets as a straw man, to cover up the fact that liberalism is superior to conservatism. Conserving a corrupt nation and racism and playing stupid about racism is a despicable and cowardly and beta philosophy to have. Very sissy. There are gay people who are thin as a stop sign, okay, who are more masculine than the strongest racist person because their philosophy is such a sissy and emasculated worm philosophy. Okay. So keep in mind that we are at the point in society where people play stupid, largely because there's a huge movement to destroy heterosexual appeal and to bash black people, and so they are distracting people while they do these things. If you are 30 and up, you must know I am right. Look around. Where's all the heterosexual appeal? Why have women lost their sex appeal to a large degree? Why are so many people gender neutral? Not just in California. Look at MAGA. MAGA is like a gay movement is how it comes off. They look very circus gay-like. If you disagree, please put in the comments. I've been saying these things for a long time. Lots of people have agree with me, and I still have yet to meet one person who disagrees. So if you disagree, please, I'd love to hear your rare counter-argument. Okay. And we see, for example, when they talk about, the gay gatekeepers in hip-hop. Okay, and then when people, E. Michael Jones saying that they're telling black people to go to the gay disco, so to speak. We see it with so many testimonies out there on top of the people who agree with me, so many testimonies. So the black male who was discussing this with him in the video said that he feels like he is saying that he is there at the college because of the color of his skin. He is right as Charlie does things in a way that creates the situation for people to think that. Okay. He is a right-wing politician type, and he is hell-bent to bring in a conservative America, which is a horrible idea. Through conservative thinking in both parties with progressive and woke strawmen, America has failed to have a fair economy, a logical economy. They failed to wage an effective war against rape and child molestation. They failed to house homeless people when it's very easy to. They failed to audit the government effectively. They're failing. I could go on and on and on. Just catastrophic failure. They failed to restructure the school system, to explain once and for all definitively why the IQ test doesn't show intelligence, and that there's different forms of intelligence, which even a child should be able to tell you, right? Book smart, street smart, right? Morally wise, existential intelligence in regards to why we're here, understanding people, and on and on and on. They just failed miserably. It's very, very sad how they failed, and they failed for white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacy. So, with that being said, where I agree with Charlie to some degree is on DEI. DEI, is a distraction, a waste of time, and a straw man for logical solutions for people of color who are owed more compensation than their white counterparts, generally speaking, because of the racist component of American culture, especially American governing class culture and the American government, right? So, for example, if you went into a police station and you tried to file a report, and they said, fuck you, and you were white, right? And they're white, okay? You could probably sue them for, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000, maybe even $100,000. But if you went in there and you were black, and they said, fuck you, and they added the N-word, then that person's owed more compensation because that's also a hate crime. And so it is with the oppression of people of color. So not all poor people are oppressed to the same degree. We're in a system of white supremacy where the reason why people are poor are either because they're white people with certain types of genes, right? That they want to be there more, and it's not entirely that simple. Sometimes people become poor for other reasons. Sometimes they have drug addiction, what have you. But the system is designed, and you all know it, it's designed for certain types of people, say English people, certain types of German people, to have the money, right? Look at the history of eugenics, right? It was a Northern European system of racism and trying to control breeding and to improve and impair racial qualities, okay? So you get certain types of white people in the ghettos and the trailer parks, what have you, the low-income areas. Okay, now it's not one-to-one, but that's how it's designed. For example, if people spent 200 years, we'll say, throwing a number out there, designing a system to make sure that certain types of white people and certain types of black people and certain types of people who think a certain way, which has implications on their genetics, aren't going to be given a fair shake, are less likely to get money, and you make women gold diggers to a large degree, okay? And that system is a scientific racist system, but that's the system we have, and that's what they've done here. And if you look into the history of eugenics, you see that it's clear. A lot of these institutions, like even Stanford College, were founded by eugenicists, and they're pushing a certain model for education that gives people who are less intelligent the upper hand. That's why a nerd is defined as foolish and contemptible and worthless and boringly studious in the dictionary, right? These people aren't very life smart. You see gangsters in the streets who are far more sharp and perceptive and far better businessmen than a lot of nerds, right? And they're better at communicating with people and persuading people, okay? And they didn't take a class for it at all, and so on and so forth. So why are they selling drugs instead of selling cars or something? Because the system has been designed to put them in that place. There's one politician, I forgot what he said, he was a president. He said, if anything major happens in America, you can be damn sure it was planned that way. Do you think that the distribution of wealth and the legislation that dramatically affects the distribution of wealth, has something to do with a major event or major events? You betcha. Okay. So Charlie makes the absurd argument that because the black student is at Texas A&M, that he is a living example that if he works hard, he can succeed, and that is all there is to it. The kid is actually beating Charlie Kirk by the 3-minute and 15-second mark. Let's stop here for a second. So, does the fact that that kid attends Texas A&M University mean that he's being given a fair shake and he can be whatever he wants? No. What kind of a dumbass would think that that's the case? 1,000 hate groups, 10,000 members of the Klan, massive prison gangs, all kinds of prison gangs who are race-based prison gangs, all these race-based gangs, every race-based organized crime, and you think that he's given a fair shake? Race-based social clubs and fraternities. To this day, I'm told that there's a lot of Freemasonic lodges where if you're black, you can't attend them. And they're basically centers for networking, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And they don't let black people into their Masonic lodge to network with them, okay, in a country that's 62% white and probably around 67% plus white and white Hispanic. Not to mention all the whitewashed people that do things their way trying to get ahead. So his argument is absurd. If that kid drops out of college, it has to do with how the education system is set up. Why should you have to learn a bunch of stuff you don't need to learn? It favors people with certain types of memory skills, right? People who can parrot information back more. It favors people who have less stress in their neighborhoods and less stress in their life. A lot of times when students are doing bad regardless of color, they ask themselves, do you have something going on at home? Why are you performing poorly? And we all know that the white man designed the ghetto for the black man to fail, and anyone else that ends up there. People of color, poor white people, what have you. It's that straightforward. Why don't they hire more police officers in Chicago and in Oakland and in Watts and in D.C. and Baltimore? Why are they just now, after generations of a lot of damage being done, starting to say, hey, maybe we need more law enforcement? Why are they just now saying maybe social programs are a good idea? Recently they started saying these things. Before, they hardly said these things, and they're very straightforward. Because if you go back to the 50s and the 40s, if you said these things, they would hang you from a tree or something. It's that bad. And people knew that the people who wanted to kill them for that were still around, so they were hesitant to say it. And that's part of why politics is controlled, because America isn't just a racist place. It is a terrorist-run state where white, Jewish, and LGBT terrorists terrorize people. And you all know people get blacklisted for much less than what I just said. And is that fair? No. Okay. He brings up that the reason why black people have gotten poor since the 1965 Civil Rights Act is because of how the culture has been perpetuated, referring to the culture and cultures of American racism. Okay. So my point number 2 was the absurd argument that, that because that kid is at Texas A&M College, university, that he somehow is a living example that black people can be whatever they want to be. I mean, that is just total hogwash. Okay? We all know that there's networks. Look at the Epstein network. Are there networks of privileged white people and, sometimes token minorities, which is not very easy. If you wanted to sink to the level of being a despicable token minority, it's not very easy to be that. Okay? And a lot of times it has to do with family. A lot of these guys are in old money families. They're crypto this, they're crypto that. Okay, crypto Jews, crypto whites, crypto Freemasons, what have you. You can't be whatever you want to be, and to make lots of money these days, basically people sell their soul to do so. I can't think of a single example in my entire life, and I'll be 44 years old soon. Okay, everybody I have ever even heard of with money, except for my father, earlier on in my life, was somebody who basically sold their soul. They're moving certain networks that behave a certain way that's best described as Luciferian. It's basically that simple. Okay, point number 3. Charlie makes the mistake of arguing that half of the Jews on the planet were killed in the Holocaust and that everything they earned was taken. However, he is downplaying and using that, mind you, to argue that why can't you be like the Jews or the Asians, right? Almost every American adult knows immediately those arguments are complete rubbish. Yes, there's token minorities, there's Freemasons, there's various people in college frats, and there's various people in their networks that they help out who make a significant amount of money. Okay, but those are whitewashed groups. It's supposed to be a multicultural society. You're not supposed to have to sell your soul to some whitewashed group to make a living wage. I mean, that's outrageous. And that's basically the situation here. It's not entirely that simple. There's people who slip through the cracks, but that's the general design of the system, and it's a racist design. That's why almost every black person refers to these guys as token minorities, like Jesse Jackson. The Jesse Jackson types, most of them aren't that famous, but you get what I'm saying. So why am I right and why is he wrong? Well, he is downplaying the immense wealth that the Jews had outside of Germany and that they had amassed and that they're helping each other out, right? Everyone knows Jews are very clannish, generally speaking. They kind of help each other out. Not all Jews are rich or middle class are rich, but they help each other out more than other groups, and they admit that themselves. You go to YouTube and Google it, you'll see countless Jews admitting that that's how it works. Okay. And they're also less stigmatized than black people. For example, during the transatlantic slave trade, they were the slave masters to a large degree and not the slaves, right? It was whites and Jews and white-skinned LGBT people, whites and Jews, who were the slave masters during the transatlantic slave trade. So these people don't have slavery hanging over them. They have a relatively brief event that occurred, the Holocaust. But, they were allowed to make lots of money. There were many rich Jews in American history, okay? And they weren't considered colored. So they're part of the people that benefit from white privilege when we're talking about white Jews. Okay. They still have the wealth from the slave trade in America, and basically no American Jews that were in America at the time of the Holocaust were put in camps. So there's all these American Jews here who were not put in the camps. They weren't in Germany. They weren't put in the camps during the Holocaust, and they still have their money. And the other guys who came here, they helped them out. It's pretty straightforward. Also, the global system is largely a Judeo-Christian system for whites and Jews, and by whites and Jews. Jews are like another group of white Americans. Even Hitler often had trouble telling them apart from the white Germans. To compare the two groups, right, blacks and Jews, is insane and reflects a lack of understanding reality. Again, that denial. They're in denial so much that they're delusional because they keep lying and they start believing the lies and they start going insane. They start living the lies, and it causes a lot of people a lot of stress and harm and damage. People kill themselves. People rape and murder because of these things. It's very sick that they do this. Very sick. This is true first and foremost because when one accepts the mark of playing the game and playing stupid, nothing good ever comes from it. There's 50,000 suicides a year in this country. 60,000 people die of lack of adequate access to health care, and there's countless other problems. There's 6,000 people die a year from lack of adequate access to health care, lack of access to a doctor, what have you. And there's countless other problems that we have here in America. Countless rapes, child molestation, countless. It's very sad that everyone just wants to play stupid on everything, where everyone suffers. It's very sick, very sick. So people need to rally to me and stand with me. We do not need countless people playing it from the inside while the souls of people rot because their whole family, because people won't rally to me and they say dumb token minority bitch shit like, well, that's up to you, while they betray their whole family while not being a man when they are supposed to be indigenous people who are spiritual, for example. Clearly token minorities must be defective. So why is that? So in other words, I've come across people who say, hey, I'm doing my part. People like you never do your part. Isn't that absurd? That's like everybody in the black community decides to be, a token minority, a house black. And there's one guy trying to get, do the civil rights movement, saying, hey, we're playing it from the inside. It's like fucking retarded. 93% of black people, black adults, black males, I assume they're referring to, are employed. 93%. Almost all of them, I'd imagine, are best described as token minorities. Do you think you're helping solve racism by being just another token minority playing from the inside, or some kind of woke idiot who's clearly controlled opposition for the oppressor? No, people need to rally to uncontrolled opposition, which is me, the one valid black leader and leader of any kind on the planet. Or they're just part of the problem. That's how bad it's become. Okay, so I'm going to have to make this, I'm not even halfway done with this paper. It's like 1.5 pages. I'm like halfway done from with the first page. So, but I'm went over time here, so I'm just going to end it here. So stay tuned for part 2. I'll make a playlist, see my Charlie Kirk playlist. Stay tuned for part 2.